Hey, welcome to the Runaways podcast. My name is Cody. We are back from Chicago. This is basically, I think, the last tournament of the year. I'm back with all the guys. I think we had a pretty successful weekend. So we're going to talk mostly about that. I do have, I guess, a rant I want to do later. And then we have a bunch of questions as well.
I
But
think
it's,
that's to be expected.
yeah,
Nobody's shocked.
the rant is not about Chicago. Chicago is great. But to start off, Noah, how you doing? Welcome back. You brought Starvo to
Yep.
play in Chicago. I know that was like your first. That was your first big event playing LL. It was also, I think,
Mhm.
like your first big event with those heroes even being legal
Yeah,
at all, since you didn't play much when they were actually legal. So, how was your experience in Chicago?
It was fun. Like I wasn't really sure what to expect. I assumed a lot of people would recognize that Starvo was the deck to play, and I was also at like the restaurant adjoining the convention center. There was like infinite FAB people, so I was trying to get all the news of like what people were playing the next day. Made a bunch of like last minute, late night adjustments. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't. But yeah, I enjoyed the format. It was less of the you're dead in 2 turns than I think people had predicted. So yeah,
Yeah, I agree. The games typically last a little longer, or you're deciding to not let them last that long in a lot of cases.
it was like quite funny. I kept making jokes with my opponent about how some turns I would throw Fused Oaken for 3 consecutive turns, and then other games my hand would be like a 3 card 4. So yeah, quite the variance in how good your hands are in that deck.
And Dan, you are the only person on the team who decided to bring RuneGate Chane. After I warned people about some of the problems with the deck. Everyone, I think, played Starvo for the most part. How was your experience of bringing RuneGate Chane to Chicago?
That was great. I'm so glad I switched. The deck is like pretty high variance, I would say. I think it's fair to say. Like you see some of your hands and you're like, this isn't going to work at all. And then sometimes you never banish a blood deck card for a couple turns and you fall behind like 30 health. But the deck is so powerful that it's okay. And as long as you like hang on to a rune chant generator and arsenal, you can come back from most spots I found as long as you still have your husk. So I don't know. I think the deck is like incredibly fun. Uh, Extremely powerful when the cards line up. Like when you draw well, the deck is just insane. Um, I don't know. I was happy I switched off of Starvo. I planned to play Starvo, but I decided to opt for the deck I like instead of the deck I thought was maybe better. Um, yeah, I don't know. It was great. Had a ton of fun. I snuck in at 32 for min cash, which I'm pumped about because I thought I was dead.
Yeah, mid cash is always good. Almost everyone on the team that made day 2 cash, right? Or everyone who made day 2 cash.
I think everyone did that day, dude.
Yeah, it was a pretty good turnout. Lucas, you joined me in the top 8. Made it a little further than I did. Had a pretty unfortunate game, I think, on stream. But overall, how was it to not play any Flesh and Blood and then bring Starvo?
It was awesome. Historically speaking, when I just don't put any work in and I just throw together a Starvo list with cards that I think are probably unoptimal the night before, it just like works out 100% of the time. The only time where I've ever entered a tournament with Starvo and not done very well was when I like actually prepared. So I think moving forward, if there's any Living Legend events, I'm just not gonna do any work, and then I'm gonna audible to Starvo at the last moment and play that. But it was awesome. One thing about this event that I really liked was it was really small, which meant that basically everybody I played against was a known player. I went through like all my rounds, and every person except for one the entire weekend was either somebody who I knew beforehand from topping multiple other events or topped this event. The of the 2 people I played, one of them topped this event that I didn't know. So that was really sweet. Just getting to play against a lot of good players and skilled players. I always really enjoy that. So that was awesome for me. But also, I just love Starvo. I love getting to play Starvo. I'm happy with my results. I really thought this was my event to win. In Swiss, I went 10-1, and my one loss was I drew up 4 cards against Chane on the last turn. He's at 1 with his husk in his banish, and I need to be able to block 10. If I can block 10, I win, and I can only block 9. And that was my one loss going into Top Cut. So like, I felt pretty unstoppable. And then in my game in Top Cut, obviously a few things went wrong for me. I also made a couple mistakes. So I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't win, but being disappointed that you didn't win is like kind of ridiculous. So like in all reality, I'm very, very happy with the result. Another calling down, another one topped, especially on no prep. I should be eternally grateful.
Yeah. I had, I think on 3 separate occasions, 3 different people come up to me and say, I played against Lucas and he just fused the entire game.
Dude, all of my opponents were like saying that after the games. And then I like went through my games, whether it was at the table thinking about it or like afterwards. And that was like not the case at all. Like there were a couple people who I fused like a lot, but like for the most part, pretty much all of my games were like at or below what the mathematical fuse rate should be. I think people are just salty, but
Or
maybe it's possible.
You fused every time that was actually good to fuse.
Well, it's always good to fuse, man.
Not always.
No, sometimes you know, and you only fuse for blues.
Yeah.
I mean, even fusing blues is pretty reasonable.
I
That's
just wanted
most
my
of what
hero to get in on the action, man.
That's most of what I did.
Wanted to have a hero power.
Dude,
I just thought it was funny that they came up to me like, man, I play against Lucas. He just fused every turn. And I was like, well, that's Lucas. I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's just.
Dude, I think Starvo's like real hero ability is that he gets to play like Winter's Whale and all the elemental cards. And then like sometimes you have a broken hero ability, but like who cares about that? Winter's Whale is the broken card, and then everything else just kind of falls in line.
Yeah. I got to play Chane again, which was super fun. I will, anytime there's an LL event, always bring Chane, basically, no matter how good or bad it is. I still am of the impression that Chane is not nearly as good. I think RuneGate Chane is significantly better than Boomer Chane, and we can talk about that a little bit later. However, I mean, I lost 3 games, if you count my top 8 loss, and 2 of those games the deck just didn't function, which is why I lost. So that is the risk of playing it, which is why only Dan joined me from the team to play it, because that was like it was a known thing. I was just like, there will probably be 2 matches where the deck just doesn't work, and I have to win every other game that's not those 2 matches, which is basically what happened for the most part. It was a little unfortunate timing in the top 8 against Starvo, but overall, I was super excited that I got to play the deck. It performed about exactly where I expected it to perform against the matches. It was cool to be able to show it off on stream, and the deck was just like, it was the best performing game of the entire tournament was on stream, which was pretty fun. That game was not remotely close. But yeah, I got to top 8 again, back to back, which I thought was pretty cool. So overall, I was super happy. I was the most disappointed that I had to stop playing the deck. I think for the last like several days, I've just been thinking about playing Chane, like because I just love playing the deck.
Dude, I get that. I was like, I really wanted to play the finals. Like outside of like having the extra win, like I just kind of wanted to keep beating people in the Starvo mirror on stream. Like that's so much fun. Like it feels so validating.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I got to top this event so I can keep playing. I was like, as soon as I was out, I was like, well, I'm bummed that I'm not winning the tournament, but I'm also bummed that I can't play this deck anymore.
Do not tell this man about side events. He will lose his mind.
Those don't matter. There's no stakes there.
One thing I noticed, by the way, watching back some of the coverage is like how difficult it is to close out games in FAB. If you see like there's a bunch of games on stream where it seems like one person is totally winning, and then you get to the end of the game where you're like, okay, this is probably going to be the last turn. They'll just close it out. Their deck stumbles or they make a mistake or something, and suddenly the other person's back in, and then you think they're going to win, and then the first person ends up closing it out. It was just interesting to see that end game of like it being really hard to actually put them to 0.
I think it's especially true in LL because like the heroes, I think Starvo is like the biggest example of this, but it's true for a lot of the heroes where like they're so powerful, but like the cards that they play are powerful or like naturally they're synergistic. So when it doesn't line up, like the Zen deck in LL, for example, is like you have the highs of like, I'm going to do 60. And then for the next 5 turns, I'm going to hit you with the 4-card 4. And then like Starvo is like similar as well, where like you can Oaken into felling somebody and do like 20 damage and rip their whole hand. And then the next turn, you, like you mentioned earlier, you just pitch a lightning form to attack with your weapon and pass. Yeah. But I think it's actually cool. It feels very fabby to like try to parse out your win condition in the end game.
Yeah,
I think a lot of the decks are just sticky. Like they just find a way not to die on that turn or the next turn. Like they just things line up in a way that lets you live a little longer than they usually can in like CC.
Yeah, you get like
they have a power spike that can actually turn around the game. That's like why people I think like LL is because like you're not actually out of the game. Like you can turn it
Yeah,
around.
you can have like
because the
3
decks are so
terrible
powerful.
turns to open, and like it's fine.
Yep.
As soon as you hit your like 30 damage spike turn or your fused Oaken Hold, like it's all good.
My two Zen games in the weekend, I went down to sub 5, and they were at least, I believe it was like 30 and like 20 something with the life totals. But like then I played Awakening, and it's like boom, you're just like right back in the game immediately.
This
terrible
one I don't
example.
like.
That card is terrible.
I think it's pretty cool, guys. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I don't know. I love playing against like Starvos, and then they just like get a lead because they'll always get a lead in the first like 3 turns of the game, and then there'll just be a turn where you're like, okay, now I play the game, and it's typically on Shackle 3, and then you just win after that. Like doesn't matter if you're down 20 health, you'll just win the game as Runegate Chane.
Yeah, I think
As
Chane's
long as
biggest
you don't
edge is
Starvo.
like not giving decks room to come back.
Mhm.
Like once you start blocking against Chane, it's a wrap. Unless they miss all their shackles.
Well, I was saying, it's like once you start blocking, you can't start. Like a lot of the time, the game doesn't like end. The Chane doesn't win on the spot, but like you are just going to try to fatigue them because there's like
There's no choice. Yeah, as soon as you block, you just locked yourself in, whether you chose to or not. They're blocking forever.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed too the kind of mini game since we played 8. I don't know if the deck lists are public yet, but we played 8 somersaults in our version of Starvo.
Mhm.
So there was like a lot of times where you have to evaluate whether it's better to have a somersault set to play for defense, or if you just like want to get your big attack back to set that because based on how they blocked, you think they're maybe going to come in with a medium turn. You want to make sure you have a threat. So I think like, yeah, knowing whether to use them on offense for that like pseudo only 3 value versus the, potentially 4 to 6 you could get on defense was like really fun to try to navigate.
Well, yeah, because it's also like it's like theoretically 3 value, like you mentioned, but it's also like a billion. Like it's it's like drastically. It's like win versus lose.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes they take a setup turn and then you fuse, and instead of fusing your Crippling Crush, you fuse your blue Fruits of the Forest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was usually referring to cards like a Red Cadaverous Tilling or like a Spinal Crush, for example, where it's not so obvious whether it's better to have those set compared to the Somersault.
So it's quite obvious after the weekend that Starvo is the best deck in LL. I think that is what everyone expected. That is what the results look like. The top cut was what? 5 Starvo?
5 Starvo, 2 Chane, 1 Viz.
Yeah, 2 Chane, 1 Viz. I will say there was only 2 Runegate Chane, I think, in the entire tournament, and it was just Dan and myself. We both made day 2. I did end up, topping with it. I think if there were more Runegate Chanes, they probably would have done better. I think Boomer Chane is just pretty bad. It has a decent game into Starvo, but its game into how wide the meta is, its ability to compete with the other aggro decks is like severely limited. There was a lot of belittle Duskblade chains running around.
I was not impressed.
As their strategy into Starvo. I can see how it can work, but Starvo has so many ways to just say that you can't play any more than 1 card on your turn that it feels a little disingenuous to think that you're just going to stack a Duskblade indefinitely and win.
Yeah, I played against Evan, and I had a turn where I fused a Starstruck, and that took his Husk. And then, like, a turn later, I just fused a Spinal. And then he has his Duskblade on 3 counters, and I'm like, it just kind of seems dumb. Like, I guess you could just hope that I'm not going to do that, but...
Yeah, but you have Hyperthermia, but you have stuff like...
Hypo, you have Warmongers, and you have any hero ability just...
Yeah. And then if you throw like an attack, they block a little bit, they plan to do the thing, then you're like, even Blizzard can get there. Like a bunch of like other little like stuff can get there as well. Just seems difficult from my mind.
You also just like always have to play an attack and a non-attack every single turn. And like your deck doesn't have the flexibility of being able to like not do that.
We also played Plow Under in our deck too, so that's another card that can mess with the setup, hitting one of the pieces they were hoping to use.
I didn't sub the Plow Unders in any matchups, but in theory,
I really like that into Chane. It was more just like from playing into the Runegate Chane where it's important to get rid of the generator that they have set.
Yeah, no one playing Plow Unders against me versus like our testing internally with everyone playing Plow Under was so much easier. I was like, oh, I'll just set this Dirge in my arsenal and I know it's safe.
Wait, you didn't only play against internal Starvos at the tournament?
I guess that
That's
might
weird.
not be Dan's experience, huh?
Yeah. Dan did play against
Like the
what,
only
both Lucas
people in the
and
room who
Noah.
tested against Rune Chane.
Yeah. To be
Yeah,
fair,
I think I've played more RuneGate Chain than Dan has.
I think 14 games was the exact number.
Oh, I've definitely played.
They're
I've probably played like 4 or 5
And maybe
times.
like 2 Blitz games, if that counts.
so do you think they should do something with Starvo? I personally don't think Starstruck is
Well,
the issue.
I
Right,
want to
then
walk
it's
back my
dropped
like.
today, right?
It's-
So like clearly they chose not to do anything.
I still
I
think it
think
was
they
goofy that they unbanned without seeing the format, but I think Starstruck is incredibly good for the format to be a 3 of because it pushes Zen out pretty hard, and I think Zen is just like terrible for the game in its like
agreed.
living legend existence.
Yeah, I still think Awakening is just like
Yeah, Awakening just needs to go. Like
it's just
it's just not fun.
It's-
Like
it's like frustrating as the Starvo player sometimes. I'm like, bro, I'm not supposed to win. Like this is not a game that's supposed to go this way.
but like when I was testing Starvo, like I would be like not happy to have the card be gone, but the fact that I'm cutting like a generic non-elemental card from the deck is like really nice.
Yeah.
Because it can lose you games too. I was finding a Starvo.
Yeah, it lost me my 1 game in Swiss. Just
Mhm.
being a no block.
But the effect
And
is
if
just
they
like it's so stupid.
If they don't want to ban any cards in LL, they could just say Starvo can't play this card. Let Oldhim play it. Oldhim needs it. Let Oldhim play the card. Like,
I agree.
I think
Yeah,
Let
I'm pretty
Bravo-
sure it
let
goes
Bravo
against
play it.
their. I think it goes against their philosophy, but
I kind
I
of
would
think
like to
it
see
ruined
that.
the top 8 a little bit. Like I think every game I watched in the top 8 was decided by an Awakening.
I was in
Like when
2
it
of
was
those
drawn?
games, and both. So my game against Michael maybe wasn't decided by Awakening, but if he did not draw Awakening, I think I would have won that game because I would have. He probably wouldn't have taken so much damage, and then I would have resolved my Awakening on the next turn. And
I just feel like it like trivializes a lot of games and like makes it become like who draws Awakening at the right time.
yeah, our game was literally like I'm losing the whole game. Like I'm behind. He has 1 turn where he can go behind, but that's the turn he draws Awakening, and then I draw it next turn, and then it's just like he's at 2, and it's like he got to do this broken thing after being ahead all game, and I don't, and like a lot of games feel like that.
Yeah, I would be happy with that card gone. I mean, I had a cast against me. It didn't matter in my Starvo games because that's just like not how the RuneGate Starvo match works at all. They should actually be cutting Awakening against RuneGate Chane.
I think so too.
I think the fact that you can block with it a lot easier and that it's like so unreasonably high impact means you're supposed to play it even though you're usually ahead. Like it's
Tough.
it just straight wins you. Like it straight wins you like a lot of the games that you resolve.
I just don't think so. I mean, almost every Starvo game, my husk goes until the end of the game. Like it dies to my own blood debt, or I win the game with it still up because I will forever just hold my husk up indefinitely.
Sure.
Just because you can never win the game if my husk is up. Like it's just impossible. Like you have to do nothing but block.
Yeah, that's how it
That's
played
why
for
we
me
go
too,
back.
except for exactly the game against Lucas where he fused.
Yeah. Occasionally
I
it
had to use
it's
it.
different, but
No. I'm agreeing with you. Like I
Yeah.
played 5 Starvos, and in 4 of them, my husk didn't get used. Like I just chose to burn it to blood debt after like 6 turns of not being attacked.
we did have a Viscerai. I expected, at least a Viscerai. The issue with Viscerai is it's very inconsistent. I think that's probably
well,
pretty
one of the
obvious,
reasons
right?
why it's inconsistent is because people choose to not see the lines that would be consistent because maybe it's too hard or something. I don't know, but
I can't do it
definitely saw
either,
it from-
man.
What's up?
I can't do it either. That's why I didn't look at it for like Worlds.
That's fair. Yeah,
I just don't understand
Creepers
Viscerai
has too
lines.
much text on it. It's too complicated. But yeah, I don't know. I saw some Viscerais doing some crazy stuff. I played against one in Swiss who just literally made rune chance up to 20 by like turn 5, and then played Mordred Sonata, hit 5 attacks. So he took me from 42 down to like 3. And then I played a card that I think we've talked about a little bit called Awakening, and then I won. But it was spooky.
Yeah. I mean, I think if the meta were to condense a little bit better, if we had like a couple more tournaments, that would be good as well. Because people are still just playing every aggro deck, which just like doesn't make any sense. Obviously, some of those should consolidate. I think Zen is just not a real playable deck, and people should kind of start dropping in if we had like another tournament, because it just can't beat Starvo in any like reasonable amount of consistency. I think if the RuneGate Chane deck didn't just blow up on itself at some percentage of the time, it's like a high percentage of the time compared to like other decks of that style. I would say in like this event, I 100% expected 2 games for the deck to just fail, and that's exactly what happened. I think since it's such a high percentage of that happening, it can't be the best deck. But if that didn't happen, it would be the best deck in LL, because the Starvo match is so good. Like, legitimately believe it's 70%, and 5% of that is my deck failing. So like, I think Starvo only has about like a 25% chance to win that match. Personally, that's like internal testing and our results at LL.
Yeah, I think I went 5-1 and you went 4-1, right, Cody? Or I went 4-1, you went 3-1, I think.
Yeah.
I don't care enough to try and disprove that, so I'll allow it.
Yeah, do we even have any idea when the next LL event will be?
Oh, apparently the Battle Hardened at Memphis. I was very happy to see that.
So the third event, the like ultimate.
Well, that's nice though, right? Because like most players that are like competing consistently will day 2 the Friday calling. So if you miss top 8, now you get to play.
Looks like it's
LL.
CC.
What?
I was like booking my ticket for it earlier. I'm pretty sure it's CC.
I don't think so.
I mean, I'm literally reading the page now, but okay.
wait. Is it CC?
Yeah,
slow roll them like that.
Yeah.
I think it's this.
Wait, what did I miss?
I have
Did I read it wrong?
empirical evidence in front of me that it is that. That's great. So how do you overall think about the LL meta then? Is something
I think it's great.
done? We just need to let it evolve out a little bit.
I think the meta played pretty well. Like the Starvo seemed resilient enough to the hate, and like the meta is basically Starvo and decks that beat Starvo. But like, I don't know, it seemed like most of the matchups are pretty fun.
Yeah, maybe with the new set, we get like Dromai gets more tools or something like that, or she becomes another relevant force.
Yeah, there are definitely decks that beat Starvo.
It's just PT1 meta, right? Like it's Starvo, it's Illusionist to beat Starvo, and it's Runeblade to beat both.
Yeah.
But are less consistent because no ice.
Let's give us an ice Illusionist. Whoa.
That'll definitely be a recipe for people to quit the game.
That people would quit.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
Cool.
We didn't need them.
Okay, so anything else you want to talk about for LL?
No, you can rant.
Okay. I have a rant that has nothing to do with LL. It's the player of the year setup, I think, is just like incredibly poor. I think the way they're doing that is essentially just gifting one of 2 players money. And that's basically the entire use for it, is to give Brody or Fang money.
You mean for the US,
which I'm friends
right? You should add that in the front.
No, it's over. There's an overall.
Oh, is there? Okay. I thought it was regional.
Yeah, so the way it breaks down, just so people at home like don't understand like how the player of the year thing works. So you have one overall player of the year, they get $25,000. Then there are 2 like first place regional players that get $15,000. Then there are 3 second place regional people who get $10,000, and then there are 3 third place that get $5,000. So obviously it's broken down by region. It kind of looks like the overall winner cannibalizes their region, since the regional winners are only 2, and every other slot there are 3.
Yeah, like if you're in America, you're playing for third.
Yes, exactly.
You just like actually like you. So I think the idea behind the tour is that it kind of incentivizes players to get out and to do kind of what, I mean, we're talking about Michael and Brody, obviously, like what they're doing where you go to every event, but I don't think it's enough money to like actually make people get out and do it.
Well, it's not enough placement spots to do it.
Yeah, which I'm not necessarily saying that the way to change it is to add more money, but like the way it currently works is like there's just not enough money to justify it, because you're like hoping that you can beat Michael and Brody, which means that you go to every single event and do better than them just to try and get second. So like that's probably unreasonable for most people. which
Yeah.
means that this program is just not in place for Americans because it's literally just you're fighting for third, which
Yeah.
somebody will get third, obviously, but that's
I
obviously
mean, they asked Hamilton about it in his interview, and he was just like, "Yeah, I don't care about this because Michael and Brody are going to win it." Like,
Yeah.
it's just like even he doesn't care about it, and he would be probably the only other person who could try and do that because he would be able to win a majority of the events that he went to, right? Sure. So I think in the other regions, it's probably a little more fun. I think in the U.S., you're just competing for third, which is going to be, rather difficult. It's something you could do. But the issue is, it's just like the way it's set up. It's like you can't be involved into it. Like, even if like Michael and Brody didn't go to everything, it's just like the way that it's set up. It's only to reward like a couple of people anywhere who travel to everything or have the ability to travel to everything. And so the majority of the player base, even in like a pro player circle, cannot engage with this in any meaningful way. So nobody cares about it. Like legitimately just no one even thinks about it or cares about it. And it's being pushed on every stream. Like, here are the player of the year points and stuff like that. And everyone's just like tuned out of this, disengaged. So I don't understand who this is for, because it's not like making people go out and play games because they can't ever hope to compete in this thing. Even the top players don't care. So it's literally just like a bad system. I do have a solution for this, by the way. I didn't just rant for this, just the rant. I actually have a solution that I think is perfect. How I think it should work, and you can adjust these numbers however you want, is it should, at the end of the year, take every player's best 5 callings, best 5 battle hardens, and all their best placements at all of the majors, and then add those points together, and that's how you win. So it still rewards people who travel to everything because they get more shots at doing well. But if you're only able to go to like, I'm going to go to 5 battle hardens or 3 battle hardens, I'm going to go to my 3 or 4 callings, and you do like extremely well at all of them and get high points, and then you go to majors only and you get high points, then you can qualify as this player of the year, which would make sense because you like winning a bunch of stuff or doing really well. It doesn't like hurt people who go to everything because they get to then pick, like it picks and chooses what their best placements are. But also the people who like go to 3 callings, top 8 all the 3 callings, go to like Pro Tour, win a Pro Tour, and then they like cash at all the other events. Like that's like an amazing year run, right? Like that's like a phenomenal. That's like a player of the year type of run. Because
and you have no chance in the current.
And you have literally 0 chance of qualifying in it. And it's like a thing that you could map out for like a majority of top players, or like anyone who wants to like try and compete in this. They can map out, okay, what are the 5 callings I want to go to the year? And it could be 3, it could be 4, it could be however many you want it to be. But what are the ones I'm going to go to try and get these points? And then maybe like later in the year, they're like, ooh, I have that one battle harden that like I didn't top or I didn't do well at. Can I squeeze this other one in so maybe I can like knock that one out of my standings? Like it's like a way better to engage with the actual process.
Yeah, I think the other big problem is they made battle hardens not super top heavy, but I think callings might just be a little bit too top heavy for what it is right now, because the EV in traveling for callings, which I know the company might not care about EV that much, but like you can't really travel for international callings, I think, for most players and hope to do well. I think there's like a few players around the world that can, but like I think it's really hard to justify it, and even for the best players, it's a big risk. And they're just so top heavy. Like there are so many world tour points for how much money there is, that it's pretty, I think, unreasonable to like spend $1,000 to $1,500 to travel to a calling to like get some world tour points, and like if you top 8, you like barely make your money back.
Yeah, I have a funny stat for you. I have topped 2 callings at this point. I have 20 points for the run. If I top 8 one more calling this entire year, I have as many points as you get for winning worlds. I just thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I
was
just,
like my first take. It's like
I
you could win all the Pro Tours for the year and you might miss top 3.
If you won all the Pro Tours for the year, you would still not beat Brody and Michael's amount of points that they will get for the year.
Like surely that's
You
his
just won't.
spot. Like
if we actually wanted to award like player of the year, like player who like had this big, had good performances, I think they need to do the system that I set up. Limit the amount of points you can acquire from each of these callings, battle hardens, to your best ones, and then your major performances.
I think you could alternatively, you could go the other way. I think if you add more money into callings or the world tour, like if you pay out, I don't know if they pay out past third place I don't believe they do for this year. But if you did like pay out to like top 10 or top 20, you give them something. Maybe there's like more justification. But if the company, which I imagine they don't, if you don't want to just throw more money at it, then I think that's probably another reasonable solution. You could also, it would be weird kind of because it's like the world tour. I think it would be interesting to have like only regional callings and battle hardens count for points, where like the majors count for everybody, but like you only get points for callings in your region, to kind of like incentivize people to play in their region and not to, like we mentioned, spend like 4 figures on flights just for points.
Yeah, I mean, you
But I'm
could
not sure if that's practical.
You could do that, or I just like the world where if you're limited to the amount of events that
Yeah, I
that
think
can
it's a good
count,
system as well.
then like at the end of the year, you're just like, dude, where is a calling that I can go to? I am so close. Oh, I might be able to knock up if I like top 8 this event, and then that's like an actual storyline, and people can actually engage with the process. But like as it currently sets, legitimately 2 people in the world are engaging with the process.
Yeah,
It's just like I don't understand what this is for.
It all comes down to whatever the intent of the system is, right?
Correct.
Which we don't know.
Yeah.
But like as a player, this system made it. Like Cody said, we just can't care
it's
about
just
it.
sad because it feels like it should be cool. Like I want to do this.
The
Yeah, like
idea
literally
is
anything
cool.
but
Yeah.
what it actually currently is would be so much better. Like even if like top 20 don't get paid, but they get like a promo or
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
or like
they
a
did with the
PTI
with
or something.
special card, right? Like, what if it's just top 10, which is feasible for people to be like, okay, I'm kind of on the bubble. Let me go to these extra 2 events at the end of the year to squeeze into the top 10. They
Yeah.
get some kind of special card. I think would be reasonable.
Like if their intent is to get more people to travel to international events or like
This
more
is not
events.
this is not doing that.
But my point is like this is what we want too. We want incentive to go to more events.
I want to. I would love to go to every calling and
Like,
have it be close to justifiable. I don't need that much of a reason. Like
we just need like a little bit more reason to go, right? Like some of these like international callings are like very close to being justifiable.
Yeah. Like I'll go to every calling if you give me enough reason to. I just don't have that reason.
Yep. I also think Battle Hardens being included is just kind of silly. Like surely it should only be professional events, but that's fine.
I mean, Battle Harden's fine if you limit the number of points you can get from a Battle Harden. Either cap the total amount of points you can get, or just cap it to a certain number.
Or like Lucas said,
count.
increase the pricing.
Yeah, if you like win like 5 Battle Hardens, like I think that should like go towards your points.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But it can't be all that. Like for example, like you can't just like you can't top or win several callings and then scrub all of the majors and then just be like player of the year. I'm like, you're player of nothing. Like legitimately, like if you don't do it well at all at majors, like you'll never in my eyes be a player of the year or whatever award you want to give it to. Like you have to at least do well at some of these. At least cash. At least do something, right?
To be fair, I don't think anybody has quite mapped out the process. It's possible that, like, for example, Brody and Michael might not win, but I think
it's only 32 points for winning worlds. Like
they
already have that many points.
Right?
Like
I think
like if they're playing 20 callings compared to like the average players playing what, like 2 to 6.
I think it's like a little bit not quite top heavy enough, but it is like I think Battle Hardens are like a big deal where like they really don't matter very much unless you grind like 1 million of them. But it does feel weird that you can win like X number of Battle Hardens and ever come close to Worlds.
Yep. And I like how far down it pays points and all that stuff is great if you're trying to find the most consistent player, but you just have to limit the amount of things that matter so that people can engage with the process. Unless you don't want anyone to engage with it, in which case it's just a sponsorship for 2 players, which is fine as well if the company can do whatever they want, but like just what is the intent here? Like
it's not.
Like what is the intent? Like how do we engage with the system? Because people would like to.
Right? And they might do more with it, right? Like I thought they were supposed to do like an OP announcement previously this month, like regarding like what's going to happen with Elo and this leaderboard. But
yeah, do you think it's feasible to make some kind of change when they announce like how they're going to be moving forward with Elo? Or do you think it's like we're locked in for the year?
It seems likely that we're locked in.
Probably make more sense.
I think it's likely that we're locked in, but I also think it would be very LSS-esque to do something that people don't expect them to do for the good of their players. I have faith that they at least care. And hopefully after the first few weeks looking at the leaderboard, they kind of recognize that maybe this isn't shaping out how it was perhaps intended. But
Yeah. You have to somehow limit points and let people actually engage on somewhat of an, because it's never going to be an even playing field, because not even everyone can go to like every major, right?
Yep.
Like that's still only probably like 300 players who go to every single major, right?
there's like
So-
no way it's that high. as
Yeah, I think
well.
it's like
Yeah.
less.
It's
it's like 150.
If you think about it, like every
Something.
major has like 3 to 450 players, and like there's
But-
4 of them or 3.
Yeah,
of them.
but what, 200 of those are always like the same people?
Yeah, I think like 1 to 200 is probably what it actually is.
Okay. So like, even if it's only to like get those people to engage in it, or a trade in and out system where it's like, if you go to all the majors to get points, so you do this. Like, there has to be some type of levers used to limit the amount of events that count, so that people can try to do the process. Because I would love if someone like popped up, they like top 2 callings, they like won another calling, they like top 2 battle hardens, they like cashed in 2 events and like won a nationals, and that's the player of the year. And I'd be like, that's fine. Like that's a real, like, a pretty
really?
great run.
That's it.
That's super consistent, right? Like that's still like a really good year.
I don't know. That sounds. I'm gonna be the player of the year. This is easy peasy.
Yeah, I didn't sound good
That's
enough
all
to
it
me
takes.
How many players have done that though? There's not that many players every year that are able to do that. That's an incredibly consistent. They win nationals. They cash at the 2 other events. They fail out at 1 event. They win a calling. They top 2 other callings. They win a battle hardened. They like top another battle hardened. Like, this is like a
How much
very
do I-
good run. Yeah, like that is a great year. That's like a top 10. That's like one of the best years you'll ever have in a trading card game for most competitive players. That's like a Hall of Fame year in Magic. Like, you know what I'm like? Your expectation because of how the game works is just like
Dude,
way
just
inflated
inflating
because of people like Hamilton.
I think we're
Like
just weighing
Hamilton-
pro tours too highly. Like, if you're not placing in a pro tour, I don't think you should be player of the year.
No, I liked Cody's thing. No, Cody's thing sounded a lot better. Dude, who cares about pro tours? Dude,
I'm just saying, if you sit down and map a year out like that, there's very few players who have ever done that. Like, it might sound too easy, but there's almost no players who have done that.
Yeah, not quite in a 12-month span.
That's an incredible year. I topped 3 callings, and I think my year's great. And I cashed it like every major.
You should be.
Like, I think that's a great year for a card
It is.
game. That's like great. People are used to like Hamilton winning everything, and they're like, you're like, this is super unusual. Like, as competitive as this card game is, to have one player that's able to win that often is just like astronomical. And I think he's talked about this before. Like, this just doesn't happen in card games. It's why it's incredibly impressive. Not as card games as big as this and as competitive as this. It's just like this type of continual run, deep runs by one player is just not a thing that ever really happens.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. He's like so much better than everybody else. It's kind of frustrating, dude.
Yep.
I'm like
No, I have no
every event
rebuttals.
that
I'm
I'm in,
conceding to just he's the best.
dude. Every
Nothing we can do.
event that I'm in, like my goal is like, obviously it's always to be the best. And I like, when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, every event that I top, he's gonna be there.
Yeah, he's just waiting
The
for you.
only way I can possibly ever be the best is just by beating him at every single fucking event. Because otherwise you just can't, because he's always gonna be there.
So I don't know. I think a good step back looking at like other card game runs, and it's very impressive and it's very unusual of a run. So something that will probably never be repeated again in the history of the game is like an actual really big deal.
It's not even just
to be
Flesh and Blood
happening.
either.
So, no, it's like any card game, except for the really
He's
small
won like
ones.
3
The really
Alpha
small
Flash
ones
Pro
don't
Tours
count.
this year.
Yeah. Oh, you meant for the ones that he wins.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like an insane run. Okay. Anything else on the topic of this player of the year?
No, we just wish we could engage with it, like you said.
I'm gonna win it when it's fixed. That's
Okay. Next is for some podcast questions. These questions are asked by members of our premium Discord. If you'd like to be able to ask questions in the podcast, see my RuneGate chain list with sideboards that are now posted in the Discord. We have also the Zen list. We have also the Viserai list. The Jarl
list upcoming.
The Jarl list is upcoming, as well as the videos of Luke is working on that, or as
Those
to
are
his
very
streams.
much coming.
Ask questions, and a bunch of other things that you can get by just joining the Discord. feel free to join in the link below. So, first podcast question here from Millen says, what could be changes for Blitz in order to be a better format in higher tier events? I know the answer to this. It's
They
really
would
easy.
like test for it and like balance it and like make their sets with it in mind. That would probably help.
No. The answer is really simple. Give all the heroes 40 health and have an 80 card deck.
No, that was mine.
It's called CC. We don't need Blitz. This is not a real format. Blah.
No, I don't like that. I like having different formats. I think Blitz is actually really interesting. I just think that it doesn't always feel that way when the variance stacks up. But I think it's okay to have like a slightly higher variance format that like, because one of the big things is like CC has a really big emphasis on like game plans and kind of general strategy.
It's the whole game. It's the full game. It's not
But
the beta. It's not the demo. It's not the early access.
No,
version.
I do think like
it's the full game.
Worlds 1 Blitz was really enjoyable, I thought.
Yeah. I
thought
think
the
it's
games were
cool
good.
to have like a smaller format where like the decisions matter a lot more and the decisions are different. Because I do think the most interesting part
It's called
of FAB,
LL.
the most interesting part of FAB is like when the games are sub 20 and both players are like jockeying for a position. And Blitz is like you get like shot into that immediately. It's
Yeah,
just,
but you have
both
everything
full
up
armor.
still. Yeah.
You both have full armor. You both have everything still. So it gets a little bit lost.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly what the switch is, but I do think Blitz has the potential to be a good format. They just need to like try.
I have more hope of Commoner being good than
Yeah,
Blitz.
that's what I was actually going to mention. Yeah, the
Okay, go ahead.
armor situation, I think, is what kind of devalues the decision making, where your armor is just like way too powerful for starting at 20. Oftentimes, how you're getting to that sub 20 life in the real game is because like you have expended some of your armor, and one hero having like the powerful armor while the life totals are dwindling down, that hero is usually like super far ahead. So I think the problem with Blitz now is it just encourages you to blow all your armor right away to try to put them out of the game. So I think, Commoner having like much less powerful armor, you still have like Goliath Gauntlet, you still have some cards that are like vanilla block 2 and block 1. So you still have armor that does something. It's not just like all Iron Rot, but you don't have like the super powerful armor that is not usually a part of the game when both heroes are sub 20.
I say we just kill the armor. No one gets
Armor's
any
like my favorite
equipment.
part about that.
I don't even know how to respond to that.
Yeah, that was a wild.
I don't know, man. I don't
What
engage
do you
with Blitz. I can't answer this question.
The next question. None of us engage with Blitz. None of us.
I think it should just be some modification between Blitz and Commoner to make a 20 health format a reality.
I do for sure agree. Like equipment runs the format. Like whoever's got the best equipment.
Commoner actually looked like a fun game to play.
I keep bringing my Commoner decks to these tournaments,
Oh,
but
I hate
I'm
Commoner.
making day 2, so I don't get to play.
I've only played a few games. I think that format.
How long ago though?
It's like very degenerate.
It was at where were we just recently? Portland. It was in Portland.
You played the
I played a couple different matchups. I didn't play the tournament, but I just like played some commoner decks, and I felt like it was way too fast. Without armor, it felt like a problem, and then the slow games just felt like mind-numbing and just like
that's why I was saying some kind of combination between Blitz.
Yeah,
and
it just they all felt too fast or too easy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I watched the Commoner stream that was done, and those games actually looked a ton of back and forth, ton of decision making. Looked relatively interesting.
I watched a couple. I could not make it past round 2. They just looked so boring.
Yeah, it did not feel like.
Oh, it didn't look good. It didn't look good to watch. But there are games that if I was playing this game, I would have enjoyed playing this game.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Next question from Fighting Walloon says, one definition of variance in games is that games play out differently when you play them again. FAB decks often try to create consistent plans that play the same every game. What are matchups that you have found to have the most of this kind of variance? Games play out differently that you have enjoyed playing.
I don't like defining variance this way, so I'll have somebody else start the answer.
They said this is a type of variance, not only.
I had almost this exact conversation. I was playing in this side event right after Lucas's game. It was like LL side event this past weekend, and I got matched up into Fang round 1. And I was like, all right, I hope I learned something from this game because like you played way more Starvo than me. So in the mirror, I'm sure like there'll be situations that I haven't seen before. He's like, oh yeah, I'm still finding new situations in the mirror. Like all the games end up playing out so differently. So I think that's one that definitely has some variance in terms of just the way that hands line up. It always
Yeah,
plays out differently.
one thing I was just recorded another podcast with Michael Hamilton and Roger right before this, and one thing we talked about was how one of the things that makes the Starvo mirror so interesting is that you have very similar situations occur in many games, but the actual decision and the conclusion that you come to is going to be very different based on like small differences in the game. And I think the Starvo mirror is like a good example where like I feel like a lot of the games are monotonous in like what actually happens, but like the things that happen in the games are very similar throughout the different games, but there's like very big differences in how you make the decisions and how you actually want to play out your cards. Although to be fair, I do think that there are also like a lot of niche interactions that do come up like only once every 10 games or whatever that are also relevant. So maybe it's not the best example, but that one would strike out to me.
I was going to say Zen Aurora for me is one of those matches that I think plays differently every time I play it. Has some similarities on like how you want to approach the whole game as a whole and some things you want to go by, but like how you get to the end screen is like vastly different every time. And how you handle each turn is completely dependent on the card that the Aurora played on that turn. And I find that game very dynamic and very fun.
Yeah. Do you have anything to say, Dan, before I talk again?
No, not really.
Okay. Another one that I found that was like maybe not so positive was playing Betsy in Heavy Hitters Limited. Those games had like the most insane variance where sometimes you just like play the aura next hand, draw the big attack and a bunch of blues, and like just they never really got a chance. And then some games you just like play the aura and then next hand draw quad red, and then you just like lost all your value and it's really bad. So yeah, I think that one had a lot of variance and it was not as fun.
Yep. TCG Ted asks, after playing in Chicago, what are your thoughts on the LL format? I think we kind of covered that, but I loved it.
Yeah. No, I just think Starvo's dominance is actually like healthy for the format.
Yeah, I think it's fine, personally.
Yeah, so many people were like, oh, I'm so hyped. I get to play this tournament. I got my anti-Starvo deck. So people love to counter him.
Yeah.
And like you still see everyone bringing the deck they like. Like even if you look at like the Battle Hardened top 8, it's not all these Starvos. It's like a bunch of people who switched to their favorite deck.
Mm-hmm.
Which was pretty cool to see Connor like switch to Dio in top and then Pat switch
Pat
to Florian in top. It was just like, okay, sweet.
Yeah, Aaron Chance made top 8 with Dromide. That's like his deck, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mista asks, 5 Starvos in calling a top 8 with a mirror finals. Starvo won the Chicago Battle Hardened as well. What are your thoughts on Starvo's current power level? And what are some unique ways LL can balance Starvo without making a ban list necessary?
We're 48 minutes in? So I'd start by watching the first 48 minutes.
Isn't that a show?
I would say I would like Somersault to be adjusted.
No, see, you know what's nice? Is
I
that
have no issue with Somersault.
Other people don't play as many copies, so it's like they already adjusted.
I think most of the unfun games that Starvo has in LL nowadays are because of that card.
Yeah. I think it's just Awakening.
Awakening as well. I think Awakening should be
just Awakening. I have no issue with Somersault.
Yeah, I agree. It's just Awakening.
I think it depends on what direction you want the format to go in. I think if you want a lot more of these like Aurora, Briar, Acilio, Zen, kind of like good aggro decks that people might enjoy playing that do really powerful things, if you want those decks to be good or playable, then I think Somersault can't exist. But if you don't mind that those decks are just kind of not very good, then it's fine. I don't think it has a balance problem right now. I think the games are really engaging. They're really fun. They're very dynamic. But like a lot of the decks that feel like they should be allowed to exist can't, because I think in large part due to Somersault and Awakening as well.
If you want less Starvos to win, people need to stop playing Zen. Like legitimately.
Yeah.
Because Zen is just like gatekeeping so many decks right now that could compete with Starvo, or at least could try and put a plan together, but they have no chance at beating Zen. And so it's like people need to stop playing Zen and then actually just like have a winning Starvo match. And then we would see Starvo fall a lot further than they are right now.
Yeah. It's also, if it's the most played deck, like it's quite consistent, and obviously the strongest in the format, so like it's gonna convert.
Yep.
Yeah.
Colton asks, what is your all-time favorite matchup to play and why? And do you think a healthy meta is best represented by a very wide selection of heroes, or is it more important to have fun and interesting at matchups?
I can go first. My favorite matchup to play is the the Starvo here. I just think it's really fun. I think it's dynamic. I think it's interesting. I think you have a lot of unique situations that happen. You both get to do powerful things, and I think there's a lot of experience gapping that can be done in kind of unique ways. I think diversity is not usually an indicator of. I think healthy format is a weird way to put it because there's not like an agreed upon definition. So everybody's definition of healthy is going to be different. I think that the best formats are formats where the better player wins the majority of the time, but not every time. And I think that diversity is not completely, but almost completely relevant in that kind of definition. So I would say that like currently LL is not super diverse, but I do think it's a pretty good format. I think skill is rewarded. I think matchup knowledge is rewarded. I think experiences is rewarded. But it's also not like the best player doesn't win every time. Although I suppose for this format, we have a tournament with a sample size of one, and the best player did win that one. So maybe that's not true, but at least in theory.
My all-time favorite matchup is for sure Icelander versus Oldham. Me playing from the Icelander side in particular, I never really played it from the Oldham side, but it was always super interesting to like try to understand how the Oldham wanted to approach the matchup. And then the game would like ebb and flow. I think I talked about this on last week's podcast too, where it's like, okay, am I going for Frost Hex, triple Frost Hex, Amulets, and Insidious Chill and like a huge combo turn, or am I just like tempoing them out because they're playing big red attacks and I want to like chip in damage and just go for like a double Emeritus kill?
I will say also that from the Oldham side, it is the same. It's just reversed. So like it is interesting on both sides for similar reasons.
Yeah,
Yep.
I love that matchup. I think about it all the time.
I think I have two favorite matchups. One is the Ultim Mirror. I think the Ultim Mirror is incredibly fun to play. I love playing that. And then I like playing Prism v Chane. Obviously, it's the Chane side. I find that matchup great. I love playing that matchup.
Yeah, I also have two. Mine is like Chane versus literally anything, or like Mask of Momentum Phi against Dromai, because you just get to draw cards every turn and you can't lose.
Oh, I would say also the Lexi Mirror for me, for similar reasons as Starvo.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like the same match.
As far as the healthy meta, I think the current CC meta we have right now is incredibly healthy. In my opinion, matches everything Lucas said, because I have the same opinion of what healthy means.
Yeah.
This one happens to be pretty diverse. I think the better player wins more often, but not all the time. I think it really rewards game plans and who is more prepped on a deck. And so like I think this is my example of like an incredibly healthy meta.
I also usually think healthy metas have some deck that interacts with the opponent on their turn. Usually in FAB that comes in the form of like Frostbites. But just having some way of like interacting with your opponent that's not strictly just damage or like on hit something happens is an indicator of a healthy format. It's just like a different axis that people have an option to play as.
I would say actually the CC format, I think a lot of the matchups fit that as well between Zen State, Enigma's whole game plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think for some decks, D-Reacts. And like I think there's enough on hits right now that it's relevant. For like Aurora, I think there's some interesting stuff you can do on their turn that like you have to play around. So I'd say CC like follows that as well.
Cooney asks, who do you think is a better LL ball lightning abuser, Briar or Aurora? I'm also going to put Lexi in here as well.
Okay, so it's not Lexi. Probably Aurora, right? Because
that's what I would think. Like I haven't played ball since it was printed, but
yeah,
if we're just talking about ball and not like the better deck, it's got to be Aurora.
I have like a fundamental problem with the Briar deck. It just like has so many clunky moving parts. Like you want to have blue earth cards, but those are either non-attacks or like huge attacks, so they don't reveal to belittle, or they're like a non-attack. And then if you want to play a ball lightning deck, you kind of want to play belittle, so that you have like some value for playing these 3 power attacks. But then if you're playing Belittle, it's not an elemental attack, so it doesn't work with the Ball Lightning. So then you want to play like Lightning Surge or like Flittering Charge, but then those also don't work with the Belittle. So I don't know. The deck is just like trying to do 900 things. So
Yeah,
That's why you have to play yellow Lightning Surge and yellow Flittering
you just like
Charge.
have to play like all these like
Oh.
terrible cards in your deck to
Wait, you
work
pitch
with.
a yellow, play Belittle, and then Rosetta Thorn at the end. It's perfect.
And then the
No.
other biggest problem is like you attack with Ball Lightning, I can just like block 3. But when you play Aurora, it still like does damage, you know?
Yeah. I agree. I think like the issue with Briar straight up is that it has no way to interact with your opponent at all, and you have to be able to interact with your opponent in this format. And it's not strong enough damage wise to be able to ignore what your opponent's doing and just win the game because it is too crazy good.
Yeah, why are you
so I
playing
think-
a value deck?
Like you're playing like, so people expect in LL format that the value is really high, and the value is really high. So if your deck isn't higher than what actually is high value, and or can not interact with your opponent, then your deck is bad. And I think that's why like Briar is bad. It's like very similar with like Aurora. Aurora at least can have the like nutty all in I win on 1 turn hand, but for the most part, like its ability to again interact with your opponent is 0. So you're just hoping that your good hands line up into them not interacting with you, which is like not a way you can play LL consistently.
I don't know, man. I got my shackles blown up. That sounds like interaction.
You don't need those. You're playing RuneGate.
You need some.
You blow up your own.
You need like 1 or 2.
Okay. Tharlev FX asks, would LL work better if it just took the top 1 or 2 heroes at a fixed point multiple times in a year rather than having arbitrary value to reach? I think they meant for banning heroes. Nope. Not my opinion. I
don't think
I like the system.
Yeah, they would have to do way more ban lists that like destroyed decks if that was a thing. Like there would end up being like pseudo LLs where a hero is like way too degenerate. They have to like ban cards from it, and then
Yeah, like what they did
randomly fades away.
Like FI with Belittle, I think is a good example of like they just like ban a deck out of the format by doing that. It also like allows them, I think, to make heroes like Starvo and like the Mystic heroes where like they're like obviously broken, but like that's part of the game. Like broken shit's fun sometimes, and if you don't have the LL system how it is right now, and you only have it like after every so often, you only have a few heroes LLing, then like you kind of just don't really get to print broken stuff. And like you mentioned, when you do, you just have to ban the shit out of it because otherwise you're just gonna wait forever.
Yeah. Scavazi asks, to all the RuneGate Chane players at Chicago, what was the cutest line that you came up with during the weekend?
I have an answer for Cody.
Oh,
if you
I
don't
got it.
remember the answer.
No, I have 2. I have
Okay.
2. I have 2 lines. I'll give you a amazingly powerful line, and then I'll give you a cute line. The cute line is the one Noah is thinking of. So on day 2, my first match, I'm X2 going into day 2. My first match is a pair up into Michael Hamilton. That's how I'm starting day 2. So I sit down. I get to have hopefully revenge against Michael Hamilton. Last time I played this was a top 8 match in Indy. He was playing Starvo, I was playing Chane, and I punted the end game. That has haunted me ever since. It still haunts me. It still randomly pops up into my head. I'll just be like strolling on a walk, and it'll just pop. Remember that time that you shackled before you played the Howl, and then you lost a whole calling? And it'll be like, oh God, get this out of my head. So I'm playing. It's very real. So I'm playing Michael Hamilton. Very comfortable because he's playing Starvo. I think I said that at the beginning. When I sat down to play him, I was like, I got the matchup I wanted. I'm not happy I got paired up into you, but I did get the matchup I wanted. And he's like, oh, that's not good. He plays out. He's trying to fatigue me the whole game. It doesn't work. Newsflash. It doesn't work. I do get my revenge on Michael Hamilton. I guess it's not really revenge because he ended up winning the tournament anyway. But at that moment, I felt like I got my revenge because I beat Hamilton with Chane again. So it's the last turn of the game. My line looks like this. I shackle, play an Urser. From my Banish Zone, I believe. But I shackle, I play an Urser. It's a 2 go again. card. I then use my boots to play Machinations. I then play Soul Reaping, banishing an Ursa from my hand, so I don't have to pay for it. And then I tick down. I say, okay, it uses my counter. Noah is at this time sitting next to me watching the game.
I'm sitting next to you very briefly. I then proceed to stand up and talk to the bystanders, thinking, oh no, Cody just threw this game because he doesn't know. I completely doubted him. I was the worst teammate in that moment.
But Hamilton looks at this. I have Machinations. There's a Soul Reaping next to it. He picks up both cards, reads them, and goes, so this doesn't work? And I go, no, that doesn't work. So Machinations does not target Soul Reaping because Soul Reaping is Shadow and Machinations says Runeblade. But I had shackled it, so I just used my action point there. And so he blocks for 6. I then play the Ursa and say, go again from Machinations. And then I swing weapon and kill him. It was cute because I was like, well, I have to give you a shot at thinking it has overpower. I didn't say it had overpower, but like I played it. It's the same order we used to do with like Ghostly Visit.
It's Mob's Guys plus Ghostly Visit.
Yeah, you play Mob's Guys, tick up Ghostly Visit. They think you've given Ghostly Visit double go again, but Mob's Guys doesn't see or target Ghostly Visit. That's like my cute line. That was like super fun. The crazy line is I'm playing against Viserai, and it ends up being I have 2 Widespread Annihilations, which is the 6 power attack that makes you discard from your hand. And I have an Ursa in my banish, and I have an Ursa in my hand. I tick up. I go Ursa for Ursa. If I have go again, I then play a Dirge. I have 4 Rune Chants at this point. I tick up. I play an Annihilation. He blocks with 2 cards. He didn't block my Ursa. I close the Chane. I get rid of a card from his hand. I play a Machinations. I play a Revel. I play the other Annihilation for 6. He can't block it, so he only can block for 3. I then close the Chane again. I get rid of the other card in his hand, so I've now banished 2 cards. And then I just end up swinging my other Ursa and my weaponing and basically winning on that turn. That turn was insane because he physically could not block both Annihilations.
Those are good. I think my best line was I played 2 incantations on turn 0 that passed. I think that was the strongest thing I did all weekend.
That's pretty good, though.
That's not great.
No, that's like nuts. That's not a joke. Like,
yeah, that's crazy, man.
It is very good, but yeah.
No, I don't think I did anything too cute. Just anytime you have like a Dirge and a Revel in the same hand is when you're gonna go crazy.
Okay. Their comment 7 asks advantages and disadvantages of Chain Gate versus normal gate. Okay, I'm going to rant now. I didn't rant during the actual podcast.
I think I think it's a really interesting comparison between the two of them. Noah and I guess we'll sit this one out too.
So I didn't rant earlier in the podcast about the actual deck, even though I saw a bunch of chatter about asking me to talk about it, because I saw this question. I thought it was a good opportunity to do this. So the issue with a Boomer Chain is that you essentially do nothing for 4 rounds. Occasionally you have a spike turn because you drew like an Art of War. But most of your attacks are just dinky, terrible 0 for 4s or 1 for 4s or 0 for 3s. And you're doing a lot of blocking and hoping. And then even when you are attacking for high amounts of damage, they have no control. You're not discarding cards out of your hand. You're not having any power there. Eventually you're hoping to get to like Shackle 5, 6, maybe 4 in some of the matchups, or 7 or 8 in Fatigue. And when you do that, then you have massively powerful turns and you're inevitably going to win the game. Almost every single time if you can actually control your pitch stack properly. That is Boomer Chain. The issue is that just loses to a bunch of aggro decks. It loses to like Dio and Briar and Zen. It can lose to Starvo a lot easier because you can't do anything to the early game. You're just sitting there hoping that they stop punching you eventually to get through it. And then it has a bunch of other matchups that it can be a problem. The mirror is also pretty abysmal to play. It's just about who banishes or the most shackles. RuneGate fixes all these issues. The reason for that is it is the inverse of Boomer. So RuneGate, your power turn is not on turn 7, 8 shackle. Your power turn is on shackle 3, sometimes 4.
Well, it's like shackle 3 until the end of the game.
Yeah.
As soon as you banish one disruptive RuneGate card, the game's over.
Yeah, essentially. So the power here is that your Blood Debt is 6 with on hits. You also get to play, more cards that have relevant on hits that make your opponent discard or lose their Arsenal card, whatever it might be. So in the early game, you can play big attacks that they're either taking 6 damage after you've blocked with 2 cards, and sometimes it just like also rips the card out of their hand. Like this is very powerful in the early game to get them to like slow down or stop punching you so that you can get into the phase that matters. Also, you'll just randomly on like turn 3 through 5 have explosive 30 damage turns instead of having to wait to 8 to do that. The other thing that happens quite often is on Shackle 3, you hit a Rune Gate. The deck is completely designed on Shackle 3 to try and hit a Rune Gate card. That is kind of the goal. After that, the value you get from playing that, even if you blocked with 3 cards, swinging a essentially 1 card 9 is incredibly powerful. Half the time, it ends up being something that's disruptive as well, and that's like kind of the goal. As soon as your opponent blocks, there's going to be a bunch of 6s coming at them for the rest of the game. It's just like something they can't ignore. Even if they give you like a spinal and you just send back a 3, that's like send back a 6. That's way more powerful than you could do before. If they warmongers you either set up with a bunch of rune chants or you can send back a 6, which is still way more. Like a 6 is quite a lot of damage. Because of this, it means that you are now favored into other chains. You are favored into Briar. You are favored into Dio. Zen is playable. You are still unfavored into that matchup, but you can win it. I did beat a Zen, on my run. And Starvo is, in my opinion, a pretty easy matchup. You end up on Shackle 3, typically forcing them to block, and as soon as they block and you still have Husk up, they will just have to block for the rest of the game because your damage is split and too high. Also, having turns where you're dealing 12 arcane against opponents who do not run arcane barrier because they're not supposed to against Chane gives you an alternate win condition. You combine all of this into one deck, and it's just like very, very powerful, very oppressive, rather hard to play. And sometimes you draw all 6 Sturges in your first 3 rounds of the game and no attacks, and then you just auto lose. So that's kind of the downside. But there is like 0% doubt that this is better than Boomer. It's just, if Boomer was better, I would have played it in Chicago. It wasn't. So like Rugate Chane is just infinitely better than Boomer currently. Dan, if you have anything to add to the...
Yeah, no, I sadly agreed. Like, I'd much rather play Boomer. Although after playing this deck, I don't know if that's true anymore. This is like much more explosive and fun, I think. I like the like puzzle solving of Boomer Chane, but Runegate Chane is for sure like the better deck currently in the format, I think.
Yeah, so every time you banish a Blood Debt, it's essentially the same as banishing 2 Blood Debt cards in Boomer, is how you can think about it. That's typically the value, because they mostly just swing for like 3, 4, or they do 1 arcane damage because they're seeds. So this is like infinitely more valuable. It lets you play non-attack actions out of your hand, and everyone forgets about the rune chance add to every attack. So when you go 3 wide, you're not trying to go 4 or 5 or 6 wide with this deck. You're typically only going 3 wide as your big turns.
It's still 30 when it's 3 wide.
It's still 30 when it's 3 wide, yeah, because you have all these rune chants following along with it. Cool. Charlie asks, what is your favorite hero to play in the Bazaar?
Oh, 2 for 2 on.
Oh, I'm just a Llama Forcer.
We're both 3 for 3, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
You're right.
Pig.
Llama for sure is my favorite. Like Pig, Force Llama, but that got nerfed a bunch, so now I just play Dually. Now because of Monitor Lizard, I was doing that before it was cool.
I just play Pig every time. Go Crook. Go scaling items. Win game. It's great.
Oh, thank God.
The Ornite asks, have you ever struggled to align in-game decision-making, both at a macro and micro level, with game theory or matchup-specific game plans? How did you fix this disconnect? Is it a repetition, or there's something that was missing that prevented you from realizing these game plans and being successful?
Yeah, I actually really like this question. This is part of what I've been trying to articulate and go over in some of my courses that I've been writing. I think one of the biggest problems is that when people make game plans, especially in this game, they either make game plans that are similar vernacular to other games, or they just kind of go about them the wrong way. Like they'll say something like, I want to be defensive in this matchup. And like, then you look at your hands and it's like, okay, are you going to sack 3 value here to be on defense? And then it's like, well, I have no idea. But what game plans in this game actually are, and I think one of the things that we do best as a team is make game plans. And I think one of the reasons is that our game plans are very easy to enact because they're very specific. Like a game plan against like Victor as Zen, for example, when you either play your whole hand or you block and go next, And either way, you're trying to fish through, you're getting through your deck as fast as possible to Cosmic Awakening. That's very easy to do. Like in game, you can see that. You can say, oh, okay, that's my game plan. I'm either going to give you all my cards or I'm going to give you none of my cards.
Yep.
If I'm not sure, I'm just going to give you the cards.
And you don't touch your equipment until they kill turn.
Yep.
And the only thing you care about playing around is pummel.
Yep. And all of this stuff is like very repeatable and very consistent. There's a lot of people's game plans in this game for some stuff is they're like, yeah, I want to be more defensive in this matchup. I think I want to bide my time a little bit and then find a power turn. It's like, you're playing the game. It's like, what the hell does that mean? Like what are you doing? Like, you're just like not going to take this like 20 damage turn because it's not the thing you're waiting for. If that is, that's like hyper specific then, right? It's wait. Once you have a 30 damage turn, you go. That's your game plan. But I feel like people in general, just like their game plans are hard to enact because when they're creating them, they're not putting them in the realm of the turn by turn nature in which Flesh and Blood actually plays out. Like all of this game plan stuff is I'm drawing 4 cards and having to make a decision. It's not like Magic where you can just be like, oh, I'm not the beat down here. Like that doesn't make any sense. So I would say when you're making your game plans, make it to where your game plan is like very specific things that you do with the kinds of hand that your deck draws. Like in Viserai, for example, like a game plan can be like, I'm going to block with my attacks and play my non-attacks and build up rune chance. And then, when I see Ninth Blade, I'm going to play Ninth Blade. Right? That's like a pretty repeatable game plan that you can do consistently. But if your game plan is, I'm going to set up mostly and then I'm going to play for a couple big turns, it's like, that doesn't mean shit. Like you have to like actually, I think, equate it to not always hyper specific, but relatively specific 4-card hands and specific cards that you're looking to block with and play with. Like get into the nitty gritty. You don't have to be 10,000 foot level about everything. Like our game plan with Zen is find Cosmic Awakening. That's the game plan, right? In Victor, right? It's play full hand or no hand. 2 very easy things to look at when you're playing the deck in the matchup. You do one of those 2 things, and then you're looking to play Cosmic Awakening. And don't block armor. It's very simple. It's very repeatable.
Yep. I mean, another good example is like against Aurora, if they have Channel Valley out, you always keep 1 resource up on your turn.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just part of the game plan. It's like, oh, they have this up, there's up. I need to make sure I play in a line that keeps 1 resource up because I can't let them use the D-React that draws them a card because that's how I lose the game. Like that's like a specific part of the game plan. So I 100% agree with a lot of game plans I hear are too broad, like you were saying.
Yeah, people will just say their game plan and it just like makes actually like I'm like, I don't think you know what you're talking about.
I struggled a lot with this question because I didn't understand because I've never, I guess, experienced this issue. Like, I think we're developing a lot of the game plans, and I'm like, the game plan works because you've developed it while you played games to see what worked at winning the game, and then you did the game plan. It's like
that goes into the second part of his question, where he's saying like, is it a matter of repetition? So your answer is basically yes. Like you have to repeat enough to arrive at something that wins you games consistently, and then just base your future strategy off of that.
Mm-hmm. And it should be specific, right? Like it's you should be looking for specific cards and specific interactions. Like what turn cycles do you feel like you win versus what turn cycles do you feel like you lose? Like against Victor, I know I keep going back to this example, but I like to hold true to the same example. But like against Victor, like you might notice is then the turn cycles you're losing are when you like block 3, take 4, and then you throw like 3 into 2 into 5, and they go trounce. Okay, take 2, block a card. They just took 4 on the turn cycle, and then they attacked you back again, and you just took like a bunch of damage because they spinaled you, and you like tried to block 2 cards and then throw a CNC, and they blocked with test of strength and a card and took no damage. And like you'll notice some of the kinds of turn cycles that you lose versus the ones that you win being like take a little bit of damage, take 8 or whatever, throw 30. Like, okay, that's pretty easy to realize that you win. Try to play towards that kind of thing.
Or when you pass and they pitch 3 block cards.
Yep, yeah, when they pass and they pitch 2 block cards, yeah.
Okay, wait. I have like one more follow-up for y'all to answer. Say you're playing into a hero like Aurora, where like you expect at the start of the match that she's going to be playing, let's say you expect her to be playing Carapace and Lightning Greaves. Like I'm playing Viserai. Like I'm expecting her to be playing Carapace, Lightning Greaves, Grasp, and Facepurg. But then she shows up with Crown of Dominion and the chest that makes 2 resources.
And like snaps.
Yeah, and snaps. It's like clear that she's going for the Arc Lightning combo. do you think it's like, should you completely abandon your game plan that you would have against the other
I think
lineup of Aurora?
it's too specific to the matchup. I
Mhm.
would say it's generally good advice to you should ideally have game plans for both of those if they're pretty popular strategies. And then I think it is reasonable actually with a lot of decks to have like a default kind of game. But one thing I think that's nice about FAB is since the game plans are so like hyper specific, a lot of the games with most decks you can just play, and if you play them well, normally like Flesh and Blood, you're going to do all right. And then game planning is basically just where am I sacking value strategically? Because that's ultimately like what game
Yeah.
plans are, right? Like the game is about maximizing value and then figuring out where you're allowed to sack value for other gains. So like if you're sacrificing value against a certain matchup for X reason and that reason doesn't exist, then you don't have to sack that value.
Yeah,
Whereas like
you're
if you're
saying you
playing
need
against
like very specific data from playing the matchup infinite times to know when it's okay to deviate from just playing the best math of your hand.
exactly. And so like if X reason, like let's say against Aurora, you usually don't like to attack with Ninth Blade while you have a card in hand because most of the time you play against Face Purgatory. If they don't have Face Purgatory and the best line is just to keep a card in your hand when you play Ninth Blade, boom.
Yeah, that's a
Easy.
good example.
Yep. I think actually we talked about this, might have been last week or the week before, about like how you mentioned, I kept coming up to you in Portland being like, I know the game plan is to do this, but in this matchup, I knew I could get away with doing that. And that's like the next step after, like what you're talking about is like adjusting your game plan based on what's actually happening in the game. But you have to have a very specific game plan to know why what you're doing is not a part of the game plan, right?
Yeah.
So, Copium Ascension says, any expectations or excitement for Monarch 3 and Light and Shadow Heroes? Will Bolton finally get playable charge cards?
For Bolton's sake, I hope he gets some new kind of card that does
No.
something unique or does multiple unique things.
You don't want Bolton to be good. Bolton is the type of hero with the type of design space that if Bolton is ever a top tier hero, it'll be incredibly impressive and,
I think it depends.
nearly impossible to play against.
I think it depends on why. I think if Bolton is good for a similar reason where like Lexio is good because he's hard to play against, he has reasonable value, and he has some good spike turns, that's fine. But if he's good because of like Saber's combo being too good, or because like once you draw Lumina you win, then it's boring.
Well, that's like the only way he's going to be good. That's the issue. Is it's like
except
you want him to be B tier with like
they could print like a reasonable like new kind of way for the Light Warriors to play. Like they could make Bannerets like more relevant. They could make a different Light Warrior hero that has a different weapon and like doesn't have Lumina.
Yeah, they have the design space already since they made Quivers of making some like special off.
Yeah, they could just do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Yeah, like it doesn't.
Sure, but in the current way that the deck is designed to play, you do not want an aggro deck that has on hits that you can't block cards in front of. Like you don't want that to be good. Like that's going to be horrendous for the game.
Maybe
if that style of deck is ever good. You want it to be like a fringe B tier that can spike off, that has maybe good matchups against some top decks. Like that's the level you want.
I mean,
it could
just be like Viscerai, where like it's a pretty good deck, and then it's the reason why it's one of the best decks is because of those. Like it doesn't like a deck doesn't have to be like broken and then also be impossible to block. Like it could just be like a pretty good deck that's very good because it's hard to block. Like Hatchet Dory.
Sure, they can be, but that's just not the card pool that Bolton has.
Well, that's
like
so
his cards are already oppressive
like
if he got good.
With a whole new flurry of cards where we can do all sorts of new things to help
then we get rid of the thing that lets him attack twice and do all the shenanigans.
You just balance around it. Like I don't think it's that deep.
It is balanced around it currently. That's why it's bad, because those spike turns are way above something that should exist currently. The Lumina turns, like if you could draw Lumina every time and play it, like that's actually a very good deck. The fact is, like, all of his turns that aren't Lumina are terrible.
Yeah, fair.
I just hope we get some Soul Shackles into CC. That is my hope for whatever it's called, Monarch 3.
Yeah, for sure. I want more Shadow stuff. Shadow heroes are cool.
No, just Shackles.
Okay.
Just shackles. no shadow
They
heroes.
keep reprinting
It's
shackles,
just
right? They printed them on the
Shackle the
baubles.
hero.
Yeah, they printed them on the baubles. They print them. They have like the cold foils at every event. So clearly shackles
I
are
want
coming
Soul
back.
Shackle creation.
Yeah, but what about this Arachne that we keep getting spoilers for?
The
Dude, he looks
episode's
super sick.
done. No, I'm just
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
Arachne looks pretty sick.
I keep looking at these going, man, I hope this deck's playable. This deck seems so cool.
Yeah, but how do you mark people?
That's
with cards that say Mark.
you throw it down.
I hope there's
If they
not
can't
too
dodge
many
it in
mark-
time, they're marked.
If they can't dodge it, they're marked.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, it's like you flick knives. You have to like flick the actual card at them. You know.
Yeah.
If you hit them, they get marked. But I do hope that they make a lot of the mark cards interactable. It would just like be pretty sad if the mark cards are just like mark your opponent. There's
Mark
that
your
one that
opponent.
exists already. That's the instant, but that one
Yeah,
has
but
the drawback of being an instant.
Well, it also has the drawback of just like being shit value, right? Like I think a lot of the thing about marked is like it'll either be, I mean, it's just like anything else, right? Like it'll either be on hit or it'll be kind of below rate or whatever. Like starting stake versus test of strength, right? Like
They're slightly different, yeah.
yeah, like it's either like free and bad, or like it has a pretty high cost, or it's like above rate but you have to do a quest, whether that's clashing or hitting or whatever.
I don't know. I'm hoping that it's playable. That's shenanigans up my alley. I would love to play New Arachne. I think a lot of people would. Okay. Anything else? No? Okay. We're out. See ya. Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, we're getting rid of the envelope here,
7
but
envelope
What we could do
in
here is go ahead
darkness.
and play the envelope.
All 3 pitches of envelope and darkness.